About payments a little bit. Specifically a type of payment which comes from a ZK rollup payment system. But I'll go quickly, very, very briefly, like just to put things into context where we are. We have the pre-Bitcoin kind of payment stuff like DigiCash. We had eCash 83. We had eGold 96. We had BitGold, Nixabo, which introduced a lot of cool things like P2P types of things, mining, and a lot of people think it's the precursor to Bitcoin. We had something called B-Money, also mid-90s, by someone called Wei Dai, which is a great name. Which also introduced like some decentralized elements and like a distributed. We also had Hashcash, which was also doing some proof of work stuff with hashing. But a lot of these, like some of them failed or went bankrupt. Like this eCash, which DigiCash went bankrupt in '98. Some of them became like money laundering operations. And so yeah, we then have Bitcoin, which is like the name of the paper is like digital, is like a cash. It's about cash payments, but it's too expensive. And we had eventually Lightning, which was kind of cool because we had these payment channels and we could do interesting things with them. Then we can say we have the smart contract era of payments, which is like the ERC20 based smart contract computation stuff, USDT. But these are like not private. It's still expensive because we're paying for computation, and it's kind of not very interesting. Then we come to the exciting era of ZK. Based payment protocols, starting with something called is it called Zero Cash? No, Zero Coin. 2013, before Zcash. Zero Coin worked in a so they didn't have signatures, but they had ZK proofs that a coin belongs to a public kind of list of valid coins. Anyways, it's kind of like it was the first time people were using ZKPs in the context of coins, but it wasn't fully anonymous. And I think Zcash came in to fix some of these problems. Zcash is also proof of work. Can we say Zcash uses UTXO? It is a UTXO model. Yes. Because we have this, the nullifier lists and the proof that it's not in the list and things like that. Anyways, I'm not going to get into it. I want to talk about a kind of another version of ZK-based payments, which comes from rollups, which having a ZK rollup. So we have ZK rollups on. I mean, we can think of it canonically as Ethereum. But it doesn't have to be Ethereum. It could be any other kind of smart contract platform. But there are three projects that I want to talk about very briefly. Adamintum, I believe it's called, Spring Rollup, and Intmax2. I'll just talk very, very quickly about them. Admintum, so are you familiar with the idea of validiums? Everyone is okay. So it's basically like on Ethereum we have a blockchain and we have these validators which provide validation to the blocks. And with validiums we have a rollup on top of Ethereum, but it also has its own set of validators which are providing the data availability, where we're storing some data that's not on the L1. And that's like how Validium's kind of, we have this data availability committee. So what these guys did, instead of having a full data availability committee with a whole set of validators, they have this concept of a power user, which kind of provides some sort of data for the payments rollup, it has a much less requirement than having a full-on data availability committee. Spring rollup, I mean, for all good purposes, these act like a normal ZK rollups. Like these are just, we're talking about simple kind of payment, like what you would imagine. You have computation on a rollup, and we're trying to prove some things, and we're trying to settle back on the L1.
Sorry, anonymity doesn't guarantee any privacy today.
Sorry?
Do they guarantee any privacy for anonymity?
I don't know about privacy actually fully, but I don't believe so. I don't believe so. Spring Rollup, I think the innovation in Spring Rollup was to do state diffs. So we have some state that's stored on the L1, and instead of doing the full aggregation of all the payments together and then posting it, we can just do state diffs. Yeah, so they brought this idea of a state diff, and but for all other purposes, it works exactly the same way. Sender account to receiver account, and when we just say the amount, and that's kind of the transaction, like tuple, like that's what it looks. It's very simple. So we have then Intmax2. Intmax2 is quite interesting. Intmax2 assumes that we have a user has a tree which has his assets, and the receiver also has a tree that has their assets, and then we have an aggregator in the middle which stores. So this is called asset storage. And every time you want to do a transaction, you generate a proof that you've purged parts of your tree, and you send this proof to the aggregator, and the receiver, on the other hand, merges parts of this tree, and they can also generate a proof to prove that they're new balance. And the aggregator needs to keep track of two trees, which is the roots for each user. So each address, let's call it properly. We have an address and the root, storage root, the asset root, and they keep another tree which is the transaction hash tree.
So this is just like native token, right? Like you just
Yes.
no case, you have to be covered.
Yes.
That is the address root. What's that tree again? Asset.
So this is asset storage. So this is where you'd have your USDC or like something like this, like your token.
Address, right?
Yes, this is your this is related to your address as a user. Like this is per user.
Is it the tree of what, or it's just the? Okay, it's just the. This user and this coin.
Yes.
Okay. Not hash, not tree.
Sorry?
So it's not like cryptographic or anything.
No. So it does have like it does work in a way that I guess the innovation in this Intmax is that we're now not using some UTXO stuff. We're using account based, right? Or we're trying to get the same kind of payment thing with accounts. So how do we do this? We have our accounts, and then every time we want to act on our accounts, we generate proofs. We pass these proofs, and then there's an aggregator that maintains a base layer of the roots at least, and then we can make sure that all the proofs are at least in the roots and have been updated.
And the right tree is just the update state, right?
This is the receiver's tree.
Quick question. That means that I, as the owner of my own so-called address, I have to remember my so-called storage roots.
Is that how it works in Intmax2? I don't know. I think you do have to. So it does have a bunch of problems. The problems with this one is, so the problems with this scheme is that the you cannot have each aggregator does a bunch of transactions to verify the proofs that are coming from the users or transactions. But every aggregator, to have a committee of aggregators, every aggregator needs to give to the other aggregator. So that means if one aggregator withholds data, the whole thing collapses. We have to go to forced withdrawal. Like the whole system needs to go to forced withdrawal. So the assumption is that all aggregators are honest, which is like a hard requirement. And it doesn't work in the same way as a data availability committee, where you can have, because parts of this is private. Like you're just giving a proof that you've done some transactions on your tree. So only the aggregator knows what the transactions are. So it's not like you can make it public.
So does that mean that, let's say I'm sending money from my address to your address, I will also need to know how much I'm adding on to your address? That means I need to
No.
Your address is part of mine, right? So how do I know what to edit? How do I change the numbers group on your address correspondingly?
So all actually somehow like on this is all related. All these trees are somehow related to each other. On one big kind of tree that lives, some of it lives on-chain, where some of the roots are living on-chain, some of the roots are living with the aggregator, and some roots are living on your own. So they're all kind of related somehow. But anyways, I've not really dived into it perfectly, so I cannot give you full answers on it.
Okay.
I want to get into Intmax2, but the innovation, at least with these guys, with Intmax, they're trying to do account-based ZK private transfers, and they want to make it properly. So let's get into Intmax2, because Intmax2 is the interesting one.
Right.
Does the aggregator know what the transactions are? Are you trusting the aggregator?
In Intmax1, I'm not sure, but Intmax2, no. Intmax2, the aggregator does not know your transactions. So we have an L1 layer here, which is L1. Let's imagine this is ETH. And we have a function deposit. And we can deposit on the L1 and get a balance. So anything above here, this is the L2 world. We have a user and they can get a balance based on this deposit. Now,
There's no privacy here, right? Right now, like you can deposit it at some address and you'll get, like everyone will know which address in L2 is getting deployed.
yes. I think this is public.
Okay, so the deposit is public because Ethereum.
Yeah, I believe so. Yes.
Okay.
I will explain this. I will try to explain this in three steps. But first of all, I'm just going to go over the simple like high level, and then we'll go progressively into different levels of it. So we have a user, and we have let's say we have a bunch of transactions that from different users that look like this. We have a sender, and then we have the transaction, and the transaction is recipient and amount. And then we have different transactions, right? You can think of this as a block. Now, and we can think of we can have new blocks even, right? Like of all the senders, transactions, and we're monitoring all of these blocks. Let's imagine this is kind of how things are happening on the L2. Now, what is the balance of this person at any given time? The user. It's the deposit plus all the all the sum of received minus sum of sent. So that's the balance. And we want to make sure that the balance is always positive. We never want the balance of a user to be negative. So we make that, this is, now if this was all public, then we don't have any problem. We can always check that the user has enough balance to make a transaction. We can, like there's no problems here. But this is pretty much like Ethereum L1, right? Like we can see everything, all the transactions, who sent, who received, how much was the amounts. We have them in blocks. We can always verify. Actually, the validators are doing all this verification block by block. We don't have to redo it again. If someone tells you their balance is 10, their balance is 10. We don't have to go through history. So can we do better? Can we improve this by removing some data that we don't need? And we can start by replacing the T with a hash of T and considering this a commitment. So the user makes a transaction and they submit the hash of T, which acts as a commitment. And then they receive back, we can think of this like they're acting with the aggregator or some sort of a server, and they're getting a proof of inclusion of this specific commitment in that transaction map. We can call this a transaction map. So now we have to look at the balance. Each transaction that we like. So as a user, you have a list of transactions under your belt, right? So there are T1, T2. These are your transactions, and each one has a proof associated with it that it was included. And yes, it's just a simple Merkle proof. So this is really like, this map can be thought of as a Merkle tree with a root, and we can generate proofs, inclusion proofs on the back of this. So now the balance, to prove to me as a user that your balance is correct, what you have to prove is that the sum of these transactions, what you received and what you sent, plus your deposit, is positive, and that they were included. So I don't have to see, they're not visible to us on the block. We don't see, now all of a sudden the blocks do not show what the transactions are. We don't know, we just see commitments. We just see the senders and commitments. So the blocks now look like, the blocks now look like this, S, C, S, C. This has all the list of senders and commitments.
But you still can kind of know who sent the program is sending, but you do not know who would see the plus.
Yes. And I know that these are the commitments of the transactions. Right? So this is like the H of T, right? So if you come in and tell me, hey man, these are my transactions, T1, T2, T3, these are the inclusion proofs, I can double check that they're actually included, because I know the history of the book, you can see the history of the blocks. We can see that these are actually transactions there. The only thing you can cheat, you can hide maybe some transactions that you made to inflate your balance. But then I just have to go back to the history of all the blocks and see if there's if you're a sender in any of them that's not showing on your own. That's not showing in here. So if you're a sender there, but I don't see the corresponding T here, that means where is that transaction? Does that make sense? It's just an idea for now. I'm just saying, like this. The math is always adding up here, right? So even though we've managed to hide the transaction from in public view, we can still ask the user to prove to us that they're not cheating. They can prove to us their balance. We can make sure that their balance is actually correct. That when they say the balance is 100, it is 100, because each transaction they show us needs to have a proof. And on top of that, we can also check the opposite if there was any transactions that were not included in their sequence.
But they They can hide the receiving
Yeah.
transactions, right?
Yeah.
They can hide the receiving one.
Because we do not know who the recipient is because it's committed.
So your transactions actually is a list of T1, T2. Okay, let me. If you want to. So okay. This idea. I want to capture this idea of the proof where we can go back in history and check that there's a single transaction that was made that you did not. I want to capture it in a P term called the proof, right? That we can prove that this balance is correct, basically. Do we agree that this balance is correct if these proofs add up? If each transaction you show us has a proof, and we go back and you're not a non-sender, there's no transaction where you sent it and it's not included here.
But the receiving is not me.
But why would you cheat about your receiving?
I mean, we couldn't cheat, but I mean, we shouldn't like. I mean, I just want to like do my.
I mean, if you receive some illegal laundered money, then you're not going to.
Yeah,
Like, you can show your balance less than what you actually have.
Yeah.
So what you're saying, okay, because when what happens when you do make a transaction and you send it to a receiver, what you need to send the receiver is the new T today with the corresponding proof that, hey man, I already included it in the block, and a proof of my balance, that my balance is actually correct. So this is kind of your token in a way, or this is how the receiving party, the receiver, so they add this to their list of transactions. So now your transactions, including all your sent transactions, all your received transactions, and your deposit.
So you receive transactions just say that like you are the recipient in the cash of some senders.
Yes, the recipient, the proof of it included in the actual transaction sequence in the block, and the proof that the sender's balance at that time is correct.
So you have both.
Yeah.
Block, right? That's the reason that you draw it as a block.
Yeah, we can think of these as blocks, right? Let's think of these as
You
blocks.
have different senders and their commitment of like.
Yes. This everyone can see. We can always check this.
And then
The ability to sort of prove that I'm the receiver without giving a commitment is something that's still bothering me. I still do not know how. I don't have the intuitive sense how it happens yet.
I think you can prove that you have at least this balance, but not like exact balance.
Yes, at least I think that you might be right about this one. But at least when I say I have 100, you can check that I have 100.
At least 100.
Yes, at least 100. I might have more, but at least I have 100. Yes, I think you're right. I've seen this somewhere.
Someone says you, right?
Yeah, I can't prove that I'm the receiver. I mean, I can not include that proof that I'm the receiver. Because
because I just prove that like I own some
yeah.
and show this for the sender, but I may not include every sender.
It's actually good because I can do tax
You
evasion.
cannot include any as well because initial balance.
It's not a good idea that you show every sender.
Yeah. So at least you show all the transactions which you spent money, but you don't show all the money which you received.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so we're happy with this, right?
Yeah. You have enough money to spend when you're doing a transaction.
Yes, and the receiver also happy that you've actually sent them proper money and you're not and the aggregator, whoever that aggregator is also happy because you've actually signed. Also, another thing to mention, you've signed this I don't know how you would put it, but yeah, you signed this commitment. Every time you send a commitment, you do sign it, so it definitely came from you, and you're happy with it. Okay, so now can we improve this? Like, okay, this is now great, but how do we now really? This is still a lot of data to crunch as a receiver, as a sender. We want to make it even more succinct, and the ideal is to make it stateless. Even we don't have to have state. Maybe like with every block, if we can prove that within every block, all of these were met. That at in a transaction that you're not included, and that you received your proofs, then I don't have to do it again. We can just move on, and we can have proofs of this. We can just move to the next block and be sure that what was done before was correct, and we can build on it, so that we don't have to carry all this crap with us whenever we go. So I want to define 3 circuits to do this. Let's delete this. I'll define 3 circuits, and then we'll put it into a protocol. Like we'll look at how the withdrawal will work, how the deposit would work, how a transaction would work.
Okay. Some Japanese series. I think one profile is Miss Bitcoin. Huh? Yeah. She's not in Japan. Japan probably Miss Bitcoin. I think definitely.
Okay, so first circuit, we want to prove that the balance is in a given block is correct. So the inputs to this is 3 things. Before we get into circuits, what we will do is instead of actually storing all of this, we can hash the whole block, right? So okay, let's go to the L1. What does the L1 store? Let's define this first because that would be good. The L1 state stores the hashes of the blocks and total withdrawn. This is a mapping between address, L1 address, and amounts. So okay, all the L1 can see is the blocks, which is the hashes of the blocks, which is a tree. We can have construct a tree from these hashes, and we just need to keep track of which L1 addresses, how much they withdrawn, where are they withdrawn. So going back here, the circuit, we want to verify that someone's balance in a given block is correct. We take the H, which is the hash of the block, we take account that we want to look at, and the balance. And then we have some private inputs, which is the previous H, previous balance, proof of balance, the P, we talked about there, the block, which is SC, the transaction and the proof that we want to at a given time. Yeah, so this is kind of the inputs, and we can verify. We'll do some verify.
Is it proof that this transaction is in B?
This is the proof. Yeah, this is the proof of inclusion.
Ah, okay, that's fine.
These are the proof of inclusion.
For the balance.
The balance that you claim the balance is. My balance is 100.
Okay, so up to this point, everything that is used for hiding is just commitment, and no ZKP is involved yet.
No, we want to generate ZKPs on the back of this framework.
Okay, thank you.
But notice you can prove your balance in a block by just having these 3 inputs.
Right.
My address, my amount, the balance of the account, and the block, like the hash of the current block, is enough for me to generate a proof of this of the balance. So what we want to the verification that happens is you can verify that the hash H equals the hash of the previous H, and the hash of the current block B, which is part of the private inputs. And then we want to check that balance is less than previous balance plus received plus sent minus sent. So that's our first circuit. We have another circuit. We want to prove that the current block is building upon the previous block, and it's not just random block. So it's part of the block sequence of blocks. So the public input, okay, let me just state what goal is. We can say prove H yeah, prove H is correct, basically. Canonical terms. Yeah, this circuit is important, but it takes public inputs H.
You are checking the hash, is the current hash is the same as the previous hash in the block, right? Isn't this verifying like this is like a chain of hashes or a
Yes.
next block?
Yes.
Why do you need the next circuit?
The next circuit is you want to check that it's derived from this block was derived from. So there's something I want to double check before going into this.
And another question I have is why is the previous hash private?
Previous block, which is the H, right?
Yeah.
It might, I'm not sure, but it might be not because it's private. It might be because you don't need it in the circuit calculation. Like it's not the input to the calculation. It might be that, but I can double check this. But here, okay, there's the reason why this is important, you're right, is because we want to make sure that all the senders here have actually signed it. And all the public keys are actually, are correct public keys. Because there is a rogue key attack. So an important thing in Intmax, every L2 user needs to register a key on the L2. You don't just derive it like Ethereum and you go home and nobody knows about it. You have you have to generate. There's a block, a specific type of block in Intmax called the registration block. So you will register your BLS key that you will use for transacting. So what this does here, this circuit, a big part of it is to prove that all the transactions that are in a block have actually been signed properly by the right people, and there are no invalid signatures or signatures that came from nowhere. So that's why like this circuit takes it takes it takes the list of we call it the sequence of the public keys of the senders, basically. So it takes the public keys of the senders here, and it checks that these public keys are actually registered. I'll go over the circuit 3 quickly. So to prove a balance, we want to verify a balance in the whole rollup. Like this is to verify a balance in a given block, but we want to verify a balance in the whole rollup at any given time. Balance in rollup. For this one, we just combine ZKP, like the previous one, plus ZKP2, and that's it basically. That's what we need. Well, these are the inputs to it.
The ones above are ZKP1 and ZKP2.
Yes, we can think of yes. So this is like ZKP1. Okay, the last thing is let's go over with like a withdrawal, because the withdrawal kind of is so any user can come in here to the L1 and call withdraw. You don't need anybody to be online. You don't need any of the roll-up sequencers or these aggregators to be online. You can just go call the function with the following inputs. You provide H, you provide the index, you provide an address that you want to withdraw to, you provide the ZKP3, which is this circuit there, and that's it. You now don't need the aggregator to come in and be there for you. You already have the ZKP that can give you the chance to withdraw on your own from the L1. So you're providing the block, you're providing your index, and you're providing your account that you want to withdraw to. And this account corresponds to these accounts here that are already stored in the state. So it will just check. So what this function will do, it will check if the ZKP is correct. And if it's correct, it will just give you it will perform the withdrawal to your account. But there's something, yeah. Where's the withdrawal amount? Yeah, that is also part of the input. I missed that one. I butchered up a lot of like details here and there, but I just wanted to give like a general overview of how you could have an account-based. Like, the reason why I really like this paper is because it's an account-based system of. It's not a UTX. Like, we're achieving privacy. We're getting what we want in a very succinct way, stateless. Like, it's very light. So what it does, it pushes a lot of the requirement of the proving to the client side. So you make the client side do a lot of the heavy lifting, and you reduce the role of the aggregator or the role of the validator in the middle. That's why this paper is interesting. It's because it's the most, yeah. That's kind of I hope it kind of just an overview. Like it's, yeah. There's a lot of details in this.
Can you do smart contracts on top of this? Like
Huh?
that plan? Can you do like contracts on top of this? Stateless contracts?
I think you can do some, like, I think they've tried to implement, like, you can do, for example, airdrops. I saw some experiment. I don't know if you can do contracts on top of this. But another interesting question: can you have different L1s speak to the same L2? So can you deposit in Ethereum or in different L2s, and then have them all, and have that as a agnostic kind of payment layer for all Ethereum rollups? That would be another interesting thing.
Okay. But you have to make sure that the hash is same across all rollups, right? The hash of the Intmax chain.
Well, if the hash is always stored in the L1, then any L2 can read it, right?
Not sure.
Yeah, you can store them L1, any other L2 can read it.
I mean, you need storage routes and stuff, right? L2 doesn't have access to the whole storage state.
Up to L1?
Yeah. If there is the state root of L1 posted on L2, then you can create like a proof, like Axiom proof or whatever to the L1 thing. But
If it's not posted, you cannot access it directly.
I think Optimism has posted like there has L1 root in offline, but I'm not sure if every rollup has it.
Yeah.
Was that? Sorry, I missed the initial conversation.
Like can L2s access L1 still?
Like, does the L1 post macro root?
No, they have some messaging you have to like pass the state.
Of the L1 to the L2.
I think through the.
But any L2 can retrieve.
Always do it.
No?
L2 can retrieve with using the messenger contract.
Only messaging bridge.
Only if you, okay.
Only if you have bridge.
That should be
Yeah, that's
said.
there. The thing sold for the C
I
type.
don't think
Yeah.
the chance of doing.
So that means that the L1 contract messaging needs to send to the L2 contract on the L1.
Yeah.
The so-called messaging.
Block hash.
code or whatever
Okay.
worker reads from L1 normally and then
Block
relays
hash
it
you can prove.
to L2. Normally that's how it works.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
need to create ZK proof, like that's what Axiom does, right? But in theory, yeah.
You recognize it. I think some bridges.
I was hoping Leona would be here to fill in,
You'll be back.
fill the gaps.
Hang on.
But in this, you have to make like always keep a track of your balance, right? That is the point.
What is that to do?
You have to keep a track of your balance, right?
That's an interesting thing. So in the paper they claim that you don't have to.
But then it's also stateless, right?
Yeah, exactly. So that's the part where. So it seems like after there's something they emphasized a lot on this idea that after each block, like that's like a checkpoint kind of. They emphasize this idea. So I'm assuming it's to do with this. Yeah, that's still not clear to me. But what I'm sure of is you don't have to keep track of it. And if you lose it, like does that mean you lose your like balance or like I don't think so. Like you just have to keep track of the latest. You should be able to reconstruct it anyways.
Okay.
That's kind of the idea. It's just that you don't have to reprove everything.
But if you forgot that you have received this money and it's being lost forever.
Yeah, I don't know about this. Like, I don't think you lose it. Like, you shouldn't be able to lose
Because
it.
you do not know which transaction corresponds to you receiving it, right?
So you're losing your private key.
Yeah.
That's like using the random number that we generated in Tornado Cache.
Did that make sense?
Yeah.
In whatever way?
Yeah,
And if
Yeah.
yeah. If you forget the code,
Mm.
you can
I guess.
We don't use Tornado Cache.
Yes, it's the owner's
It's
responsibility.
kind of similar.
So you have to spend it before you lose it. Oh wait, actually that doesn't make sense because if you spend it there, but then it's a negative and you can never withdraw anything.
Yeah, but it can't become negative, right?
No, you cannot have negative.
Now if you forget about it, then
Then
you
you lost it.
then you can never withdraw whatever funds. Oh, that's bad. Oh, okay.
No, but let's say you
That's in
delete.
the private keys as well, right? If you use a private key.
No, but you can't lose a single transaction.
Yeah.
You can't lose anything. You
No,
can't
no,
lose
if
a
you
single.
lose, okay. Yeah.
No, but the question is, if you had your private key and you delete all your app, you re-download it, and you reuse the you still have access to private key, but you don't have any access to old data. Can you still reconstruct your current balance?
I don't think so. Because
I think you should be able to.
in your mind.
I just don't know how.
You're dead.
But you should be able to.
We'll figure out next week.
Yeah, we'll figure it out.
Alright! Good job, guys.
Are we done?
That's it for the week. I did posted the hack Zalu link in our group chat. Make sure